Hey, happy Friday. Welcome back to another Friday Tech Workshop. I'm Joseph, a senior developer advocate with Appsmith, and in today's workshop, we're going to build a Zendesk ticket assistant using Appsmith's AI to classify and apply tags to each ticket. Now, I've got a little bit of a use case and a story to go with this one for today. So imagine you're the head of support for a company and they're trying to track which tickets are incurring extra fees from returns or exchanges. So it's easy to start adding those labels as it happens, as you're familiar with the ticket and you just need to add a tag quickly. That's no problem. But to get a report of all the previous ones, you would have to first go back through all those tickets, read through to get context, figure out what tags to apply, and there could be hundreds or thousands of previous tickets. So it could be a ton of work to try to get a report on previous data before you've started applying those tags. So today we'll be using the built-in Appsmith AI with its text classification feature. We'll ask it to look for tickets that involve a return or exchange and apply the appropriate tag. And then we'll use an async function to loop over the data and bulk update tickets so we can get all the past ones as well. All right, let's check it out. Okay, first I'm just going to walk through the app real quick, show you how it works, and then we'll go through the Zendesk API docs before we jump into actually building it. So this looks at the subject and the description. I'm not showing the full description field here, but it sends the subject and description to the API, and it looks for anything that would be categorized as a return and a exchange, a repair, or a refund. So anything that could cost the company some extra money. And then it will apply that tag to the specific ticket. I have it set up to work at an individual row level. So it will just read this one ticket, see if there's anything to update, and then it just applied that return label here. Or you can do them in bulk. So if I want to do this one, I can pick a few different ones here. I'm not sure they'll all apply, but we'll see if it finds any tickets here that need those labels. And then you can do the entire set in bulk. If you wanted to select, all of them at once or just pick individual ones. So it's sending the text of the ticket to Appsmith AI, figuring out a response for each one and then updating them in bulk. And you can see a couple extra return and exchange, repair tags that were just added in here. So we'll look at how this works real quick, and then check out the API docs and then actually start rebuilding this. Um, the main thing I want to show before we get into building is just the AI part. So this is Appsmith's built-in AI. You don't need an API key. It does use the other big three APIs in the background, ChatGPT, your OpenAI, Claude, and Google Gemini. And it'll figure out which one to use based on your use case and what you're trying to do. So with this one, classify text, there's lots of different options in here in Appsmith AI. But the classify text one, you give it some text and then a list of possible labels to apply to that text and any extra instructions to go with this outside of the exact text that they're actually supposed to analyze. And so it'll give you back a array of labels that you can then do whatever with. So I'll show how to send the data to the AI, get a response here with some labels, and then update the ticket. But before we get into that, let's check out the API docs real quick. Just a couple things I wanted to point out. So if you look at the authentication here, it's using basic authentication, but it's not just username and password. In this case, they have /token that goes after your email address. So when you go to create the data source in Appsmith, you'll need your API token, the email address that was used, and then you want to put this extra /token after the email address. It's a little weird. I haven't seen too many APIs that use this exact format, but it's easy to set up. So you got your token. Now we're going to head over to the app where you want to use it. I'm just going to edit this data source since it's already working just to show you the screen. But you'll create a new data source from here, choose Authenticated API, and then I'm going to pull up this one to edit it. So you'll want your instance URL up here with the exact domain for your Zendesk instance. And then under authentication here, choose basic and make sure you type your email with /token after it. And then the API key goes here. The token goes in for your password. So just enter that and save it. And then you can add a new API under that data source. So first thing you want to do is go over to your Zendesk account and go to the admin settings so that you can create a new API token. So I'm going to the admin center here. And then from here, you're looking for APIs and apps and integration. And then in the API section, go to Zendesk API. And then from here, you can create a token. So I've already got my data source set up and saved, but we'll just walk through the first screen here. So you can give it a description. It immediately creates that token for you. You won't be able to see it again, so make sure you copy this and put it straight into the Appsmith data source. You can leave this window open while you're in Appsmith setting up the other screen. So just get to this point, give it your description, copy that, and then head over to the Appsmith data source. So I already have my data source set up. I'm going to start out on a new blank page and start adding APIs to the data source here. So we're going to add a new page and I'll add my first API under the Zendesk data source. So just set yours up, save that token, and then add your first API to the tickets endpoint. Let's look at that URL again. So it is .com/API v2 tickets. And then from there, it's what are you trying to get? So I want to list the tickets. That one was count. And I think it's just the v2/tickets. All right, so back here to the data source, to this API, I'm going to call this get tickets. And let's test this out. All right, so I got back a 200 response, and there's an object first, and then you have to go to the .tickets to find the actual array of tickets here. So we can put this in a table. Let's drag in a table widget and connect that to the get tickets query. And then notice how it uses the .data here. It should find like the nested array of tickets, but if you need to, it might just say .data, and you've got to drill in and get that extra property there for where the array is stored. So listing tickets is pretty easy. Now let's say we wanted to update the tags on a certain ticket. So I'm going to go back here and add another API under Zendesk. And this time we're looking at a put request to update a ticket. And we need the ID for the ticket. So let's take a look at it in the docs here. To update a ticket, it's a put request. And you have the ticket ID there in the URL. So I'm going to take the ID from the row that's currently selected in the table widget. All right, so that's going to insert a valid ticket number. We'll call this update ticket. And then in the body here, we need a JSON body for a ticket that we're updating. And just like the API response comes back as an object with a ticket property and then an array, when you go to update a ticket, you don't just give it the body of the ticket. You have to give it a ticket object, which is just one property called ticket, and then everything else is in there. So it's kind of nested. I'll grab all of this. And I'm going to first put the double curly braces around here so that I can use JavaScript inside. Okay, so we have a ticket and then some property. I don't think we need these properties, but I do want to keep at least one. I'm going to just do the tags. So we'll get rid of all this. And then we're updating the tags property, which is an array. And it'll have some number of strings in here. So I'm just going to try to add a test tag to the first ticket here. It is ticket number 1. And so let's find that over here before we actually run it. Let's see, it does not actually show the ticket numbers here. And they're not in order. So what I'm going to do is search for test. I did this before and I have one called test tag. So we'll search for just test. And you can see there's no tickets. So I'm going to run this. And we have a 200 response. So if I refresh here, see if it keeps that filter. Not sure if it'll remember it. Okay, so I lost the filter there, but we can add it again. And there it is. So it did add the test tag to this ticket here. Um, Unfortunately, you can't show the tags in Zendesk in a list view, but you can in Appsmith. So I'm going to remove this test tag. All right, we are able to list tickets and update a tag on a ticket. So now we're going to use Appsmith AI to read the data of a ticket and get some suggestions on those tags. And we can put that value here. That'll give us everything to update a single one, and then we'll add some async JavaScript to do all this on a loop and bulk update tickets. So next, I'm adding a new data source. It's not just an API. You have to actually create an Appsmith AI data source first. So if you go to create a new data source, under AI integrations here, there's Appsmith AI. Now I already have mine created. I'll go ahead and pull it up just so you can see. There's really no settings to this other than files. If you want to add any files to give your AI some extra context, this is where you can do it. But I have a data source set up already. So I'm going to add my API under my Appsmith AI data source right here for Zendesk Tagger. And so this will be the get tags. And under action here, use classify text. So there's several different methods inside of here, different use cases for the AI. The classify text one will give you an input of some text that you want to classify, and then a place to have some labels about what it is you're trying to classify. It's going to pick one of these labels. And then there's some additional instructions. So I want to find all the tickets that involve a return, refund, exchange, um, or repair. We're looking for things that are costing the company extra money so that they can just filter through all these tickets and see what the repeat issues are, what keeps coming back up. So then you need some input text here. So what is it going to actually look at? So I'm going to add a button to the table widget to send that data here. It helps to have the button created already so that you can have that triggered row property. So instead of finishing the API first, I'm going to come over here and add a update tag button. Change this to a button. Okay, and then on click, that's when we would run this update tag API. So let's finish out the API now that we have a button, although I want to put this where we can see it. A lot of columns here. Okay, now the tags, same thing. I want to move those where we can see it. Tons of columns. Here it is. So we have a button to update the tags. There's the actual tags, and then the subject will help us figure out which ones we're looking at, if it's something that would have a return or whatever. Okay, now let's name that button instead of just action. All right. So when we click this button then, we want it to run and send that triggered row. There's selected row, which we used a minute ago for the update. I'm going to use the triggered row now because we're using a button. Because the row that they click, the button that they click, it might not be the row of the table that's selected. So just be careful with those two. It's easy to mix them up. But if you have a button shown on every single row of the table, the chances that they click the same row that's selected, I mean, they could click any other button. There's only one row that's where those two are gonna match. So what I want to do is take table one's triggered row and then get its subject and description. All right. And you can see it's evaluating, it's not finding anything because we haven't clicked it. So if I head back here, um, I want this to run that get tags API. So let's connect that now. And here's when we can test. So if we go look at the AI query now, you can see that it has a response and it's decided to apply the return label to this particular tag, to this ticket rather. So now we can use the response from this API in the update ticket. First though, got to fix this. Now that we're triggering it from a button, we don't want to use the selected row, it's triggered row. And then for the array of tags here, I don't want to lose the existing tags. So I have to add on to what's already there. So the first thing is just to get an array here of those existing tags. And that's also going to come from the triggered row tags. There it is. And then I need to join this with other tags. Now, if you're doing this in a separate JavaScript function, you could set it to a variable and use push and lots of other options. But to do it right here in line, I'm going to use the spread operator on the existing tags and on the new ones. So we will take this array, put it inside of a new empty array and use the spread operator on it. So it's however many happen to be here, it's just spreading them into a new array. And then also spread in the return array from get tags. So right here, oh, autocomplete is not working with the spread operator. So we'll do get tags first, get its data.response, which is an array, and then spread. So it's unpacking both of those arrays into a new array. And if they happen to be empty, either one, then this should still work because it's an array. It can be empty, and then you won't have any issues trying to concatenate them together. So this should update the tag now. You can see that it has the existing values. So it will retain those and then add on the one that came from the AI. So back to the table now that those two are connected. When you click the button, you want it to use the AI to get the tags and then actually update the ticket. So on success, we'll run the query to update the ticket, but you won't see it change in the table unless you also get tickets after that. It would update it, but this doesn't change on its own, right? So there's 3 levels to the callback here in this action selector. The first click, the onClick's main action, is to get tags and then on success update. We want to wait for both of those and then have a third level callback here to get tickets. And at this third level, there's no more drop down. You just have to write the function name. But if you click this JS toggle here, you can see it's actually writing the async JS, chaining all those together with .then. And then as you turn it off and click back in, you'll see your code. It turns it into this drop down, but if it becomes too much to put into here, you can come back to JS mode and just copy all this and put it in a JS object, and then you've got plenty of room to work and you can write any other logic you want. So that action selector will get you up to 3 levels deep. If you need more than that, put it in a JS file. Okay, so we should be there now as far as updating a single ticket. Um, Let's see. Wrong address. That one's already got a return tag. Trying to find one here that we can test on that should actually get a new tag. Okay, here's one. So this says return. Right now, there's no extra tag for it. So we'll test this out and it should call the AI, examine it, figure out what labels. It has to update the ticket and then refresh the table to show that it applied it. So that much is working. Now we want to be able to do this in bulk. Okay, it's nice and convenient to do it with a single button click as tickets come in, but if you've got hundreds or thousands of previous tickets and you're trying to categorize them, that's where this can be really useful. So I'm going to enable multi-row selection here on the table. So back out of the column settings to the main table here. And for row selection, we want to enable multi-row and then use these selected rows and loop over those. Okay, so now we're going to use some JavaScript and I'll start a new JS file. And this will be an async function because we want to do this in a loop and wait for each one of these to call the AI and then to update the ticket before it goes on and refreshes the table. We can do the updates in parallel. We don't have to wait for every single one to finish before going to the next one, but you do have to wait for all of them to finish before you get your results. So what we want to do is loop over the rows that are in the table. So I'm going to say const rows equals table one selected rows, plural. There's a selected row when you only have the single row turned on. When you enable multi-row selection, then you'll see this selected rows, plural. So those are the rows that we want to loop over. And so then we'll do a for loop over these rows. I think I need to declare this. Okay, so for each row of the rows, first, we want to await running the get tags query. And then after that's finished, we also want to await updating the tag, rather the ticket. And this will happen on this for loop, going through all of the rows. And then after the loop, we just want to run the get rows once, get tickets. Okay. So as far as the logic here to bulk update, there's not much to it. You just go through in a loop, but we do need to change the APIs a little bit for this to work because this is going off a triggered row and the user's not going to be clicking a button now. So we need a slightly different approach, and I don't want to break this update that we already have working or this tag, the get tags, which is already working. So I'm going to copy both of these and just make a version for the loop, just so we can have an option to do single or update in bulk. And so we'll have a different version here for updating on a loop. And then instead of passing in parameters from table1.triggered row, we're going to pass parameters to both of these APIs at runtime. So it would be this dot params and then whatever you happen to call that parameter. I'm just going to keep the same property name. So this dot params ID, changing pretty much all these triggered row. Let's see, the existing tags. Yeah, we'll take that from the row that we're looping over. Get tags. This should come from the loop version now. So get tags loop and use its response. And then the tag here also needs to be updated to take parameters. So we'll pass in the row, and instead of it looking for a triggered row, there's no button click. Okay, I think that's just about it. Um, and then just to change these to use the loop versions. All right. So if we have some rows selected, it should loop over those, run get tags loop. Let's just double check both these queries now. Get tags loop will take the params of the subject and the ID, um, or rather the description, and then we're using the ID here to update on a loop. All right. So I have to pass those parameters now. The APIs are ready to accept the parameters and use them. But back here in the script, I need to pass that in. So the row will have those properties. For get tags, I need the subject and the description. Oops, over here. So inside of here, I'll have a subject coming from the row.subject. There it is. And then description coming from the row.description. Then when it's time to update the ticket, we're going to pass its row and its tags, the row ID and the tags. So ID is the row.id and tags coming from row.tags. I think that should do it. We're just about ready to test this. Okay, and then the last thing is we need a way to trigger that function. This one uses the row level, but for bulk updates, we'll need a separate button here. And I'm going to set its on click to run that function, which handles everything. That should do the loop and refresh the table when it's done. So let's see. Damaged product, that one should come back with a fee on it. Item restock. I guess we'll pick some that might not actually get one either. And I don't want to do too many because, it'll take a minute. But just to test it out, we're going to send these 4 rows. So let's see what happens. So it's calling the AI, sending each individual ticket, getting back a list of tags for that ticket, and then updating the ticket, doing that for all of them, waiting for the last one to finish so that it can refresh the table. And you can see all of these just got a little longer now. We've got a refund and return tag here and a repair on this one and the next one. So we're able to bulk update the tags now, saving you tons of time as reviewing tickets if you wanted to go through the full set. You could even do this on a bigger loop and keep changing pages on the API because you're only going to be able to get so many at a time. So right now we're looping over the selected rows of the table, not the entire set that's returned, but you can only get so many, and then you'd have to loop over all those and then go to the next part, run the get tickets again and get the next page of tickets. So if you wanted, you could automate all of that. But what we're doing here is on the client side with JavaScript. If you wanted, you could also do this on the back end using the new Appsmith workflows feature. So that would allow you to do it without having to even open the app and click a button. It could just happen on the server in the back end. But I think that's it for this week. That's everything I wanted to show. So I hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions about this workshop or ideas for future ones, feel free to drop a comment below. Thanks again for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you next week.